Here it is, past the turquoise waves and pastel hotels. But nearby, a mother spreads a blanket next to a trash can. This is paradise. Once a haven for retirees, now a front line in the fight for basic survival. The question is no longer where to vacation, but where can people live with dignity? Can you live full-time on a postcard?
I didn't ask for this life.
Yeah.
I had a career,
Okay.
and I had children and a husband, and I got a brain tumor.
What happens when rents rise, but wages don't? And why are the most vulnerable left behind in a state built on sunshine? Roamkind takes you inside Florida's hidden crisis of homelessness, a world far from the glossy brochures, but closer than you think. Number 1. Hidden Miami, the growing shadow of the homeless crisis. What happens when the very people who keep a city running are the ones left sleeping on its sidewalks? Maria Delgado once lived what many would call the American dream. A modest apartment, 3 kids in school, and steady shifts at a South Beach bar. Today, she sleeps beneath a crumbling awning in downtown Miami. I worked for 20 years, she says, clutching a worn tote bag. But everything kept going up, except my paycheck. The homeless crisis in Miami is no longer hidden. It's no longer about back alleys or distant shelters. It's in the open, at bus stops, under overpasses, and outside the same hotels where tourists sip cocktails by the pool. According to the Florida Council on Homelessness, more than 30,000 Floridians currently live without stable housing. In Miami-Dade County alone, hundreds sleep outdoors each night. Some had homes. Most had jobs. The usual answers fall apart.
They're more worried about people being homeless and where they're living at than people committing crime.
Addiction, laziness, not here. Most of these individuals are still working as cooks, hotel cleaners, security guards. They keep Miami alive, yet can't afford to live in it. A basic 1-bedroom apartment in Miami now rents for more than $2,500 a month. Yet, the average service worker earns less than $2,000 monthly. The math doesn't work. The result? Families fall behind. Then they fall out of the system. Then they fall off the map. New laws, like House Bill 1365, make it illegal to sleep in public spaces without offering real alternatives. It promises a cleaner city. But for whom? When shelters are over capacity and rents are unreachable, many are forced to move along endlessly, with nowhere to land. Meanwhile, tourism thrives, real estate booms, glass towers reflect the sky, while Maria sleeps on cement. This is not just a housing issue, it's a social warning. A city that only serves visitors and investors cannot sustain its soul. When growth outpaces justice and comfort comes at the cost of visibility, we must ask, who is Miami really for? Hope still exists. Local nonprofits, churches, and volunteers are rising to meet the challenge. But hope alone is not a policy. Action must follow empathy. Change begins the moment we stop asking, "How did this happen?" and start demanding, "What must we do now?" Number 2. Homelessness is spreading. In Florida, homelessness is no longer confined to big urban centers like Tampa or Miami. Today, you can find tents, parked RVs turned into shelters, and people sleeping behind supermarkets, even in once quiet small towns. According to the Florida Council on Homelessness 2024 report, more than 60% of counties across the state have seen an increase in homelessness, with the fastest growth occurring in suburban and rural areas, places that often lack the infrastructure to respond. This spread isn't random. As major cities redevelop and gentrify, raising property values and cracking down on visible homelessness, many displaced individuals are pushed into surrounding regions, but instead of finding help, they face isolation. These areas usually have no shelters, no public transportation, and limited access to food or mental health care. Some counties, like Volusia and Collier, have reported a doubling in the number of people sleeping in cars or highway encampments within a year. This isn't just a humanitarian concern, it's a systems warning. Local emergency rooms are seeing more cases that could have been prevented with stable housing. Schools struggle as students bounce between shelters, motels, and streets, and local governments are overwhelmed, forced to stretch limited resources across growing demand. What makes this crisis more dangerous is how quietly it's expanding. It no longer fits inside old maps or narratives. When homelessness reaches your neighborhood, your school zone, your city hall, will your community be ready? This is no longer about downtown parks or bus stations. It's about churches converting basements into shelters, libraries doubling as day centers, and working families sleeping in parking lots. Florida must act now, with a statewide approach that recognizes the full geography of this crisis before it becomes the new normal. Number 3, the truth about the cost of life. Let's talk about food, something you'd expect to be plentiful in a state like Florida. Known for its sprawling citrus groves, abundant farmland, and year-round harvests, Florida should be one of the easiest places to keep a pantry full. But that's not the reality for many residents. While trucks haul tons of fresh produce across the country from Florida's fields, some Floridians are left staring at nearly empty refrigerators. At local food banks, the lines grow longer. Bread, beans, and canned goods are rationed. Even families with regular jobs now find themselves choosing between groceries and rent. So, how did we get here? The cost of groceries has risen sharply in recent years, faster than wages. And while Florida exports food by the ton, it's also importing a growing hunger crisis. Programs meant to help, like SNAP and Child Nutrition Aid, have faced budget reductions. Meanwhile, the rising demand puts even more pressure on community food providers. This isn't just about poverty, it's about mismatch. A state that helps feed the nation, yet fails to nourish its own. The contradiction is staggering, and the reality, food insecurity, is no longer confined to those visibly struggling. It's creeping into the lives of middle-income families, retirees, students, and service workers. The difference between a stocked kitchen and an empty one might be a single car repair or medical bill away. So, ask yourself this. In a state that grows so much, why are so many going hungry? What have you seen in your own community? Share your thoughts, and if you believe food is a right, not a privilege, drop it in the comments below. Number 4. The harsh reality of full-time workers. A full-time job was once the doorway to stability. Today in Florida, for thousands, it barely pays the rent. Behind the bustling restaurants, spotless hotels, and timely deliveries are workers clocking in every day, only to fall behind every month. According to the Florida Housing Coalition, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in cities like Tampa has exceeded $1,700, while minimum wage remains under $12 per hour. The math is merciless. It's not enough. Take Emma Collins, a hotel receptionist in Orlando. Despite working full-time for over 5 years, she still splits rent with 2 roommates in a cramped apartment. "I work all week, every week," she told Wesh 2 News in March 2024. "But I feel like I'm constantly one step from the edge." She's far from alone. A 2024 HUD report found that more than 50% of renter households in Florida are cost-burdened, spending over a third of their income on housing. Many spend over half, leaving little for groceries, healthcare, transportation, or emergencies. This reality shatters the myth that employment equals security. It isn't about poor choices or lack of ambition. It's a broken cost-income equation, one where hard work no longer guarantees a roof over your head. When thousands of full-time workers are one medical bill or rent hike away from homelessness, it's time to ask, what is the value of labor in a state where work no longer pays the bills? Florida's economy depends on these workers, but the system is leaving them behind. Until we fix that, stability will remain out of reach for those who never stop working. How can Florida better support workers like Emma? Share your thoughts with Affordable Housing Now. And don't go anywhere. This conversation is just building. Number 5. Tourists versus locals. The sun still shines. The waves still crash. But something fundamental is shifting beneath Florida's postcard-perfect surface. As tourism flourishes and luxury developments rise along the coast, local residents are being edged out of the communities they built. In places like Miami, Orlando, and Key West, housing markets are increasingly shaped by international investors and short-term rental platforms, not long-term locals. What was once a neighborhood becomes a destination. What was once home becomes a commodity. The result? A growing sense that Florida is being built for everyone, except the people who actually live here. According to a 2024 housing study from Monroe County, more than 60% of tourism workers in Key West live off-island, commuting long distances every day. But the larger issue isn't just about workers. It's about place, identity, belonging. As developers race to meet the demands of wealthy buyers, rents skyrocket, old apartments are renovated into vacation rentals, and locals are pushed further away, geographically and socially. Schools, grocery stores, and family-run businesses struggle to stay rooted as neighborhoods turn into transient zones. This isn't just gentrification, it's displacement by design. The question is not whether tourism is vital. Of course it is. But when a state prioritizes guests over its own citizens, paradise becomes a performance, not a place. If trends continue, Florida risks becoming a facade, beautiful but hollow, visited but not lived in. Who gets to belong in the new Florida? And how long can a community survive when it's priced out of itself? Number 6. Reconsidering policy priorities in Florida. There was a time when working full-time, paying taxes, and raising a family came with certain unspoken promises: stability, public support, a chance to belong. Today, in Florida, those assumptions are collapsing. The social contract, the invisible agreement between citizen and state, is breaking. More housing units aren't enough. Bigger budgets alone won't fix this. What's needed is a redefinition of the state's obligations to its people. A social contract that sees residents not as economic inputs or consumers, but as full partners in building a fair future. What might that look like? It begins with tenant protections, capping arbitrary rent increases, curbing speculative real estate purchases, and offering legal aid to vulnerable renters. It means recognizing housing not as a market privilege, but a right. It also requires community-led planning, where residents shape the developments rising around them, ensuring schools, clinics, and green space are built alongside new housing. Imagine zoning that prioritizes affordability. Imagine laws that guarantee families won't be evicted over a single missed paycheck. Imagine a Florida where prosperity is measured by community well-being, not construction cranes. This is not idealism. It's real, tested policy. Cities across the country are implementing housing-first approaches and inclusive zoning reforms with measurable results. Reimagining Florida's social contract doesn't mean abandoning growth. It means making growth sustainable, rooted in dignity and equity. Because a skyline means nothing if the people who clean the buildings can't afford to live beneath them. The question now isn't whether change is needed. It's whether we have the courage to rebuild the deal we once trusted. Number 7. The ongoing crisis and its long-term impact. The homelessness crisis in Florida isn't going away anytime soon. It's becoming a long-term generational fracture that imperils the very fabric of communities. This isn't merely about displaced individuals, it's about entire families, neighborhoods, and the future of the state. When people lose their homes, the consequences echo. Children are uprooted from schools, seniors isolated from lifelong neighbors. Social bonds fray, and local businesses lose customers. As families disperse, social safety nets crumble, not due to intent, but due to a lack of continuity and support. The cost of living continues its relentless ascent. Rent rising, utility bills climbing, healthcare costs surging, pushing families, even those with two incomes, outside their safe zones. Over the past decade, Florida's rents have soared faster than incomes, forcing shifts in community composition. Full-time work no longer guarantees a stable address. These shifts erode the stability on which healthy communities are built. A broken community is less resilient in crises, whether a storm comes or a job disappears. The uncertainty spreads. Students change schools mid-year. Local clinics see delayed checkups. Mental health issues increase. Local governments struggle with unpredictable demands. Florida's crisis isn't temporary. It's great and lasting. If left unaddressed, it becomes the new normal. Seasonal employment replaced by seasonal instability, local roots uprooted in favor of distant commutes, community centers emptying out because families have moved elsewhere. But there is still a path forward. If we commit to housing-first strategies, supportive services, workforce-friendly housing policies, and community investment, not just tourist dollars, then recovery is possible. Time, however, is not on our side. Each family that loses housing raises future costs in schools, policing, and emergency services. So, we ask, can Florida rise above temporary fixes and build a resilient future where housing and community belonging are constants, not luxuries? The cracks in the system are no longer invisible. Comment, we see it, to stand with those affected. Coming up, stories of real hope that prove change isn't a fantasy, it's already happening. Number 8. Support on the rise and new hope for Florida. You wouldn't know it from the headlines, but hope is taking root across Florida. In neighborhoods hit hardest by the housing crisis, something powerful is happening. Community resilience. Local groups, nonprofits, and even municipal governments are stepping up where large-scale policies haven't kept pace. Take Feeding Florida, the state's leading hunger relief network. In a 2024 report, they noted, "We're seeing demand like never before, but we're also seeing a groundswell of local volunteers, partners, and innovators committed to change. This isn't just aid, it's action. In the last year, Feeding Florida's network distributed over 404 million pounds of food across the state, reaching nearly 2.9 million Floridians. Meanwhile, the Florida Housing Coalition confirms the urgency and the opportunity. We only have about 26 affordable homes per 100 eligible renters, says Executive Director Jamie Ross. But the momentum around housing-first strategies is growing. We've seen pilot programs deliver real stability when paired with wraparound services. That brings us to the stories that matter, like Jasmine, a mum in Tampa who spent months living in her car. Thanks to a supportive housing initiative backed by both city and faith-based partners, she's now in stable housing, back to work, and even attending college. These aren't miracles. They're proof of what happens when policy meets community action. The question is, can these local victories be scaled? In Gainesville, the Dignity Village project was recently restructured into a managed transitional housing site, a model praised by public health leaders for reducing both emergency room visits and police interactions. That's efficiency and dignity in one. This isn't about idealism, it's about what works. The 2023 United Way Alice Report reveals that nearly half of all households in Florida are either living below the poverty line or fall into the Alice category: asset limited, income constrained, employed. These are working families who earn above the poverty level but still struggle to afford basic necessities like housing, childcare, and transportation. So we ask again, how do we take the sparks of hope already burning across Florida and turn them into something bigger? If you've seen a program or person making a difference, share it below. This story is far from over, and your voice belongs in it. Number 9. The struggle for stability. Florida, with its beautiful beaches and luxury resorts, is a dream destination for many. But beyond the postcards, the state hides a growing homelessness crisis that's become impossible to ignore. Once a place where hard work led to stability, Florida is now a battleground for the basic human need: housing. Maria Delgado, a mother who worked as a waitress in Miami for over 2 decades, was one of the many who found herself displaced by the rapidly rising costs of living. "I worked for 20 years, but my paycheck never kept up with the rising rent," she says, now living under a tattered awning in downtown Miami. Her story is far from unique. Over 30,000 Floridians are currently without stable housing, many of them employed in the very industries that fuel the state's economy: hotels, restaurants, and service jobs. In cities like Miami, the cost of rent for a basic one-bedroom apartment exceeds $2,500 per month, while the average service worker makes barely $2,000 a month. The math simply doesn't add up. How can hard-working individuals, like Maria, who contribute daily to the state's prosperity, be forced to live on the streets? This isn't just an economic issue, it's a moral one. Florida's wealth is built on the backs of those it has failed to support. Homelessness crisis is no longer a distant problem, but a deepening reality for thousands of residents. The question is, how can Florida, a state that markets itself as paradise, continue to thrive when the very people who keep it running are left to survive in the shadows? As Florida continues to invest in luxury developments and tourism, we must ask ourselves, when does progress stop benefiting the few and start benefiting the many? If we don't act, the price of Florida's growth will be paid by those who can least afford it. Florida isn't lacking sunshine, it's lacking safe shelter. It's not about empty buildings, it's about homes that truly welcome people. Behind every postcard lies a truth. Thousands struggle to survive, often unseen, in the very streets they once called home. They were our neighbors, caregivers, veterans. Now, many are being left behind. What does it really mean to belong? Who gets forgotten when a paradise only serves a few? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe to RoamKind to keep these voices heard. This video was created to inform and inspire dialogue, based on real data and lived experiences, not to place blame. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next journey.